please rise for invocation by Pastor Mike Swingle of First Baptist Church of Harbor Oaks, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we begin this time of city business, Father, I just want to ask that you would go before us tonight. And Father, that every single item of business, Lord, that is presented, Father, that you would just guide and direct. Father, I pray a blessing upon this city. I pray a blessing upon each one of the leaders that oversee the business of the city, including the ones that are not present here tonight. Father God, I pray that you would help us, Lord. Help us to remember, Lord, that the city of Port Orange is blessed. And Father, I just ask that you would continue to guide and direct, Lord, all those that are involved. Lord, once again, Lord, we know all blessings come from you. And we're asking you, Lord, that you would continue to keep your hand upon Port Orange. We ask all this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilman Foley,
Here.
Councilman Grubbs,
Here.
Councilman Bastian,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stiltner,
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here. We have a full attendance. We have a quorum. We can conduct business. That's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to start out with item 4. I've got representatives from the Daytona Beach Area Association of Realtors. If you all would kindly come up here. Item 4 is a Fair Housing Month proclamation. I'm going to read this first and then I'll bring it down and present it to you. Whereas the Fair Housing Act, enacted on April 11th of 1968, enshrined into federal law the goal of eliminating racial segregation and ending housing discrimination in the United States. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, national origin, and disability, and commits recipients of federal funding to affirmatively further fair housing in their communities. And whereas Port Orange is committed to the mission and the intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all. And whereas our social fabric, the economy, health, and environment are strengthened in diverse, inclusive communities. And whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, discrimination persists and many communities remain segregated. And whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunity are repugnant to a common sense of decency and fairness. So therefore I, Donald Burnett, Mayor of the City of Port Orange, proclaim April of 2024 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Port Orange, as an inclusive community committed to fair housing and to promoting appropriate activities by private and public entities to provide and advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of Port Orange. And with the seal of the city and my signature, it is proclaimed in this day and in this place. You all can clap now. Beautiful people in the middle. Put your hand on it. There we go.
Can we do one more?
Absolutely. There's one for Deanna to put in the magazine next month, right?
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. Item 5, public comments on consent agenda items. I'm checking with you, Robert, just in case. Item 6, agenda approval. We have a motion for the approval of the agenda for the evening.
So moved.
I'll second. We have a motion and a proper second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The agenda for the evening is approved. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 7 through 13.
Move to approve items 7 through 13 on the consent agenda.
Second it.
We have a motion and a proper second. Call the roll.
Councilman Foley,
Yes.
Councilman Grubbs,
Yes.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes. Consent agenda is approved 5-0. Brings us to public participation. And let's start with Emma Clark.
Hi, thank you all for having me today. My name is Emma Clark. I'm with the board of the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm just here today to thank all of you for your continued support with the Chamber and to give everyone updates on some upcoming events. All of our events are listed on the Chamber website as well. We are doing a youth civic leadership program, and applications are due this Friday, April 5th. The program's for high school students, and it runs for 1 week in June. April 5th is also our morning mix and mingle at 8 a.m., and it will be at the Habitat Humanity Restore. And then on April 11th from 11 a.m. To 1:30 p.m., we're doing a Power Network luncheon focusing on the opioid crisis in the workplace. And we're also doing a reverse raffle ticket where the sponsorships go to fund scholarships for high school students. And then our last event in April is going to be the Tasteful Affair on April 25th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that's it for us.
We'll see you Friday morning.
Yes, I'll
Thanks,
see you
Emma.
Friday. Thank you all.
Thanks,
You
Emma.
bet. And Michelle Utter.
Good evening. How are you tonight?
Michelle, how are you?
Good.
I am spreading awareness. I am
Do
Pfizer.
me a favor, pause the timer. You just tell me who you are for the record and where you live so that she has that.
I'm sorry. My name's Michelle Utter. I live in Port Orange, Florida here. I am Pfizer vaccine injured, and I'm spreading awareness because I worked at a local hospital and they have terminated me. They've taken away my insurance. My IVIG, which is intravenous immunoglobulins, is what sustains me and helps me stay alive because I have chronic inflammation, demyelation, polyneuropathy. I have cardiac issues. I have vascular issues. I have microclotting and MCAS. If you can just imagine how many doctor's appointments I go to and how disappointed I am in my county. There's 7 generations in Volusia County. I raised my kids. There's three of my sons serving in the U.S. Navy. I have been an outstanding citizen, but when I go out and start spreading awareness, I am called misinformation. I've been on Governor DeSantis roundtable, and I've also been with Surgeon General Latipo, which he has used 4 of us in the state of Florida as a political prop for his gains because he has made promises to us and has not delivered into anything. We are struggling, losing everything we have. My infusions alone are $15,000 a month. That's not including the rest of my doctors or anything. There is no cure for me. I have no idea how long I'm going to live. I have no idea if I'd ever see my grandkids or great-grandkids. But I am seeking help from each city, each county. I've talked on the legislation delegation. I will continue to have rallies, protests. I had an event in the villages, and I will continue to speak out in regards to vaccine injuries. I was terminated. They've taken my insurance away. $15,000 a month is a lot to pay for something that helps you keep alive. I have reached out to every county and city, and each person, all they do is tell me, I'm sorry, I'll pray for you. I'll tell you when you can pray for me. I want help and I want awareness because future generations have got to be protected against the COVID vaccine. Whether the mandates are going on or not, you can look at any of my medical records if you want to, and you can see that my life is being taken away from me. And I'm tired of being called misinformation because no news station, no radio station, nothing will put me out there and say the truth about the COVID vaccines because our government, our city, our county has let us down. Nobody has reached out to me and nobody has done a damn thing for me. I'm upset because my life is shortened. I expect more.
Thank you. Tracy, do you have any others? No. Okay. Council comments. Why don't we start with Councilman Foley?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Is that because you've got a new baby and you're up late at night?
We're lucky I made it on time.
All right. Tracy, what you got for us?
So I want to reach out and thank an individual staff member that him and his staff, while I was away the last 2 weeks, this all got notified, but I just want to make sure it really got put out there that Mr. Juneau and his staff awarded out $15 million to the city. And that is for the water facility upgrades, and that's money that we don't have to go find. He found it. So you and your staff, I mean, can't express the acknowledgement enough, but I wanted to make sure I said that in the record for you guys. Environmental Advisory Board, busy. Chris and her team of advisors have coming up, not this Friday, but next Friday, April 12th at 10 a.m. The water goat is being installed. So if you guys are available in the area on April 12th at 10 a.m., the water goat's going in. But not to just stop there, the last major event that we had with the city, they donated over 180 trees to the community. So they've been doing a great job. So thank you for your team and everybody that's involved in it. And then Art House. If you guys are out and looking for something to do, Art House on April 5th, which is this Friday coming up at 6 p.m. They will be debuting all new art from the high school IB programs. If you haven't been inspired, these kids will inspire you greatly. So if you're out and about Friday, 6 to 7:30 is when that event's going.
At the new Art House facility.
At the new Art House
At the
facility
rec.
at the rec center.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I got.
Alrighty. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Tracy, that's April 12th, 10 a.m. on the water goat?
Yes.
Just a couple of quick things I just wanted to loop the rest of the council in on. I reached out to the city manager and asked him for him and staff to take a look at the area that's currently under development that encompasses the south portion of Port Orange, the Pioneer Trail corridor, and Venetian Bay, and to the east of Venetian Bay. A lot of development in that area, and there's a lot of different governmental partners, regional partners for lack of a better word. And I just want to make sure that however they're tying in drainage and stormwater and all that, that every portion of all the different agencies are communicating together to make sure they come up with the best product in that area. There's, you may have seen some news in New Smyrna about an area of concern where they've temporarily halted some permitting, which is south of there, but it's close enough regionally that I think it makes sense to make sure that we are proactively looking to make sure we feel that our side of that line, if you will, is being well managed and taken care of, and that there's a plan in place and that everybody understands, and drawings and networking and all that stuff. So I've asked the city manager to kind of do that, and then at some point he can kind of come back and loop us all in and let us know what he's seeing and what the staff is feeling about the plans from the county and from the city of New Smyrna and how that may impact our area or not. Some very interesting geographical or topical, maybe is the better word, flows of the topography out there, and how something leaves one city, kind of goes around portions of our city into unincorporated county, and then ties back into Spruce Creek River in a way you just wouldn't imagine. It just doesn't, to the eye, you're like, okay, it's not going to go that direction, that's uphill, but it's not really uphill. And so there's some complexities there that I think we would all be better to understand a little bit and just kind of keep a good eye on. The other thing is I got reached out to by one of the YMCA board members. They are interested in looking at renewal of a long-term lease. Their current lease is set to expire in 27. They're looking at some investment opportunities that would involve some applications for funding and grants and things like that. So in order for them to be successful in that, they kind of got to know that they have a long-term lease commitment and stuff like that. So I'd like to ask council to give their consent to the city manager and his staff to kind of start that negotiation, not negotiation, but just discussion
I've already
see-
asked the city manager to do that, so
Okay.
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, so they can start doing that. That's gonna take some time for sure. And
Yep.
then when they think they've got something that they can bring back worth council kind of taking a look at, we can do that at some point. so.
Without a doubt, the YMCA is one of the gems of our city. It's definitely worth us making sure that we have an agreement in place that makes sense for both parties, no doubt.
That's all I got.
All right. Drew, what you got tonight?
I don't have anything tonight, Mayor, so you can.
You excited to move on into the financial,
Yes.
into the audit
Riveting,
presentation?
yes, absolutely.
Well, you're gonna have to wait because I've got a couple of things.
Okay.
Last week, Scott and I were able to attend the 100th birthday celebration of Mary Whitmire.
What's going on? What's going on?
She is a volunteer in police services, 100 years old, has been volunteering as a VIPS since 1984. And every time it comes up, I remind her, yeah, I was a junior in high school when she started doing it. She still volunteers 2 days a week, does courier work for the city. 100 years old. She is so committed. I visited with her family a little bit. It was amazing to see the room. Many times you see these celebrations, people come, they show up. There's a lot of love in that room that was totally genuine. It wasn't just people showing up because it was an event. It was totally genuine. And they were telling me that her family says, yeah, she visited up in Buffalo a couple years ago, and they came upon an accident scene, and up there, you know, in an unincorporated area, the first thing she does is grab a vest and gets out and starts directing traffic. That's just how she's wired for service, and it was just absolutely an amazing event. And it was great to see the outpouring of love last week for her. It was very, very deserving, and I just wanted to share that with the rest of you. If you see her, congratulate her and thank her, because what she does is one thing, but what she inspires others to do, we can't measure that. We absolutely can't measure that. It was just absolutely a terrific event.
And I think she made like 4 or 5 news networks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, every time I turned the TV on, they were talking about her and doing stories.
Well, Trooper Steve from Channel
Yeah.
6 came to MC the event,
was
so
very
it's
good.
like he was all excited about doing it, so it was absolutely amazing. And I certainly, of course, thanks to our police department for doing her right and making sure that that was the event it should have been for somebody like that. It was well done. I appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to mention, council, next month we typically review the manager and the city attorney in May. I have had a conversation with both of them to prepare for that. Now, Tracy, this will be the first time for you doing that. Usually what I do is I ask them to prepare, you know, some kind of formal recap so that you have something in writing from them, what the last year's been like. But the other reason why I wanted to mention it tonight is, although we review them publicly as a group, we want to make sure that we schedule meetings in advance with them to be able to do that. So Wayne will be working to get that on an agenda in May, and I just wanted to plant that seed in everybody's head ahead of time, so we've got that piece of business coming up. With that, I think we get into the most exciting part of the evening, the audit discussion with James Moore and Company. Item 15, Mr. Zach Shalafor.
All right, good evening. Zach Shalafor, partner, James Moore and Company. Do we have the PowerPoint on here?
I appreciate you following my PowerPoint guidelines and keeping it short. You're inspiring a lot of confidence in us right now.
Can you load out yours? I can just start.
I mean, I know it's 1980s technology and all that, but
You coming to rescue?
my general rule of thumb is when we're having technology issues, ask somebody younger.
I've already got it in front of me, so.
Indeed.
All right.
Who are you,
looks
sir?
like, Zach Shalafor, partner, James Moore and Company. So we are here to review the annual audit for the September 30th, 2023 fiscal year end. I think since I was under the slide count, for every slide under, we get a couple extra minutes to get into the weeds on the audit. Was that the full
Somebody
deal?
kill his microphone right now, please.
All right, as long as the 3-minute clock doesn't start, we're good.
Don't push your luck, sir.
All right. As always, appreciate the opportunity to work with the city. Big thanks as well to your finance team, John and Linda, and the rest of their team. There's a lot of work that goes into this. At the end of the day, the document's well over 100 pages. There's 4 reports that we issue that summarize the results of the audit. So did have a chance to meet with everybody individually to do the deep dive. So I will keep this as close to 3 minutes as I can to really hit the highlights. As always, the city does prepare what's called a comprehensive annual financial report. There's certain items in there beyond the minimum requirements set forth by the state of Florida. That document is submitted by staff every year to the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association. Last year's ACFR was awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. We expect to see the same for the fiscal year 2023 document, which to quickly note on that, that document is just about final, expected to be released probably on Friday, and this presentation basically summarizes all of the work that has been done with that currently draft document. The audit reports that we will have, the first audit report on the financial statements themselves. We do intend to issue an unmodified opinion that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. This is what you want to see in this report. The second report will be the report on internal control and compliance. And this is where, while we do not audit the city's internal controls, that would be a separate engagement. If we come across any deficiencies in internal controls related to financial reporting or financial processes tested in our audit, we would report those here. We had no such comments to report this year. And then the last 2 reports are specific to the state of Florida Auditor General requirements. The first is kind of a catch-all that looks at if there were any financial condition concerns. We'd have to identify those. No such items noted. There was also a section for any other comments, recommendations. This year we did have 1 comment related just to the budget process. But again, these are really just other communications, not anything rising to that level of a deficiency in internal controls as would be reported in the prior report. And then the last report basically looked at the city's compliance with state statutes over investment activity and investment policies, where we did note the city to be in compliance with that statute. As we added last year, I did want to do a quick, just kind of rundown of recent years, what those audit comments have looked like. You have 2 comments last year, both of those were corrected this year, and then most notably is those top 2 lines each of the last 2 years. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies were reported in the audit after we had a couple in the 2020 and 2021 fiscal year audits. Looking at your general fund balance, in total, this is your fund balance, basically your assets minus liabilities. Your total fund balance in the general fund of about $36 million was up a little bit from the prior year, and as always, what I really like to do is look at the assigned and unassigned numbers, which really represent your unrestricted reserves in the general fund, about 24 million and change, relative to what you spent, to say, okay, $24 million is one thing, but let's put that into perspective relative to the size of the city budget. And we come to about a 41%, 40.8% there reserve, looking at that as a percentage. So not quite 5 months in reserves. And to kind of benchmark that, the GFOA recommends a bare minimum of 2 months before saying, hey, you probably should be higher when considering, susceptibility to natural disasters such as hurricanes. So back in 2015, I believe, the council did put into place a policy of a minimum target level based on those factors of 30 to 35%. So in the current year, 40%, just a little bit over that council set minimum, and that percentage actually has decreased from prior years, going from 59% to 46 to about 41, despite the fund balance increasing, as that's gone up a couple percent, but of course just the cost of everything has been way more than 3% a year the last couple of years. So that's why, despite the dollars increasing, we've seen that percentage come down. But overall, really just kind of a well-managed approach that I think is, much in part due to having a policy in place, because that gives your team clear direction on, hey, where do we want to be when planning, what's the future year going to look like, and going through that budget process. Looking at your business type funds, your proprietary funds, primarily water and sewer, stormwater, solid waste, and the golf course. Here we kind of look at if there's any major trends in terms of a continued decrease in your unrestricted net position or any negative balances. I'll note here, all funds except for water and sewer moved in a positive direction. Water and sewer is one where that can fluctuate normally just due to the timing of capital activity, so no red flags coming to our attention there. And then on the pension fund front, I always like to touch on this every year because the city does report about a $38 million this year, what's called net pension liability. That really is geared towards just the transparency of disclosing what are those long-term liabilities of the pension plans. But really the key here is these are real-time numbers, not the actuarial numbers used for funding purposes. And as you can kind of see, the percentages increased a little bit over the prior year based primarily on the market doing a little bit better than the assumed rates of return. And again, I always like to touch on this just from the standpoint that as we can see in 2021, then to 22, you're never as good as you look, you're never as bad as you look. When it comes to pensions, I always just like to emphasize that it's about saying, hey, when there is a decision point or something that you are considering, to look at what is the long-term impact of that, a decade and beyond, which has been done by the council and is part of how those plans have continued overall to move in a positive direction.
So when you say real time, these are not the exponentially smooth numbers that we would see from the plans, but rather actual numbers specific to the year.
Correct. Yeah. So for financial reporting, the requirement 8 or 9 years ago was to explicitly say at September 30th, that point in time, where was this at? So you could be at a high peak or a low valley, and that's not going to impact the fact that over time it's a much more gradual process.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that covers what I've got. I didn't have to turn on the clock, so I think we did good.
No, you saved yourself in that regard at least. Let's see, Drew, do you have any questions?
No, I discussed everything with them in our.
I know we've all met with them individually.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have anything?
No.
Tracy? Reed?
Well, I have like 20. No, I'm kidding. You're good.
Then you can call them tomorrow, right? Zach, I appreciate, just as a comment, how would you just term our position financially as a city?
So there is a financial condition assessment process that we perform in terms of something objective, because we are somewhat limited to the what the audit reports say. I believe in that the city did rate as favorable this year, which you can basically, there's 20 some odd different indicators that are each rated favorable, inconclusive, or unfavorable. Then those are aggregated to come up with a collective rating. That's one where if you were unfavorable, we would have to notify the state effectively.
I guess where I'm going with it is in the last 3 years, we talked about this morning, we've made a lot of progress in our finance department. We're in pretty good shape.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think the trends speak for themselves.
Well, the numbers are the numbers, but how we manage the numbers is kind of where I'm at. And I want to make sure that we're managing those numbers as efficiently and effectively as possible. And I appreciate your chiming in and giving us the report.
Definitely, and this is the earliest the audit has been presented, earlier than each of the prior 2 years, I know. If we went back, it's probably the earliest in a while, and timeliness is kind of a key indicator of financial department functioning, I feel like, in terms of there's a lot of work that goes into it, but we've got some audits for September 30th, 2022 fiscal years that we still haven't even started those audits. So timeliness, again, is key, and you guys are on the the more aggressive timeline, and definitely the team hit that this year, which I think that, again, to me is one of the huge, totally objective indicators of your finance team and working through that process.
Linda and John got them moving. All right, appreciate you, Zach.
All right, thanks, y'all.
Would anyone here care to comment on the finance report? There being none, that item is concluded. That brings us to item 16, Environmental Advisory Board appointment. We have an opening due to Sean Geffert's resignation to run for City Council. We have one application for that appointment for a term that will expire on May 7th of 2027. Mr. Mark Heldreth is that applicant. Would anyone care to put his name into nomination?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a proper second. I'm giving credit to Councilman Grubbs on the second myself, but certainly like to hear from the applicant and tell us why you'd like to serve, because it can't be because of our benefit package.
Well, I was thinking about benefits, but my name is Mark Heldreth. I live here in Port Orange, been here for 22 plus years now. So I was actually asked to volunteer for this this board with my work history and what I can bring to the advisory board.
Okay. Council, you want to?
We will seek people out and find them.
Oh, yes, we will. Tracy, is one of the references from Mr. Heldreth, why don't you start with any questions you might have for the applicant?
So his background speaks to me for what he does for a living. And Mark, would you tell everybody who you work for and what do you do?
I run a dewatering company, Atlas Dewatering, here in Port Orange. We've been in business here in Port Orange since '96. Basically, it's for underground utilities construction. Obviously, you guys know if you dig a hole in the ground here, state of Florida, 2 feet, you're gonna hit water. That's when you call me, and I take care of the water for you. So, yeah, we work all over the state of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. So we're pretty familiar with some of the soils, materials in the ground, and how to move groundwater.
Me and Mark didn't meet, so the council knows, through his business. Actually met through his family. His son actually is one of our divers,
And my wife.
and wife.
I'm staying on top of the ground. I'm gonna play golf.
So as far as a family man and everything that he's done and portrayed over the years, I figured it was a good match for the city to make a phone call and reach out to him. My standing is we've been dealing with a lot of water issues.
Yep.
And environmentally, we want to protect the water at the same time and understand how to put the water in the right spot but keep it clean. And he's helped me with a couple projects dealing with diving, so that's why I made the phone call to him.
All right. Reed, you got any questions?
No, sir. Appreciate your willingness to step up and serve. We always need good people willing to do it.
Thank you.
Drew, questions?
No, it seems like a good fit, and if Tracy asked you, you clearly are qualified. I appreciate you wanting to do this. Tracy knows how to twist an arm. Appreciate you volunteering to
Good
do
job.
this. Yeah.
Sounds like he was voluntold.
Yeah. That's a
And
good word.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, nothing.
Scott, you got anything?
No, thank you for stepping up to do this.
All right.
Appreciate it. Welcome aboard.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
With that, we have a nomination. Do we have any other nominations? And I'll ask one more time, so it'll be 3 times. Are there any other nominations? There are none. Nominations are now closed. Council, final comments before we vote? We have a motion and nomination on the floor for Mr. Mark Heldreth. Call the roll.
Councilman Foley,
Yes.
Councilman Grubbs,
Yes.
Councilman Bastian.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. You're hired. Appreciate you. Thank you very much. Item 17 is a tabled item, selection of alternate member to serve on the River to Sea Transportation Planning Organization. May I have a motion to remove the item from the table for
So moved.
discussion?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to remove the item from the table and open it for discussion again. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The item is now open on the floor for discussion. We tabled this last time to make sure that we had a full quorum here so that we could discuss it well in advance. We tabled that March 19th. Everybody is here tonight. Reed, you currently serve on that, and do me a favor, just for the benefit of everybody, outline why we want to do this for everybody.
Yeah, so again, short recap. It's come to my attention that Port Orange has not had an alternate body to go in and serve on the TPO. So I want to say it was I have it in front of me. It was our February meeting where we did not have a physical quorum for the TPO, and so that kind of put some shackles on the ability to operate. Now, they got creative. They found a way to allow the executive committee to proceed and then basically go back and approve it this month. I was able to attend virtually, which I'm always able to do pretty much. The problem is that there's times where they can't get a physical quorum, and if they can't conduct business based on Florida statutes. So what they've asked everyone who's elected, or everyone who's on that TPO board, they've asked them to come up with an alternate, which apparently 75% of the cities already have in place. They already have someone. But before we nominate anybody, want to make sure everyone understood, they meet Wednesdays. They meet on the last, or fourth Wednesday, typically. It's a 9 a.m. morning meeting. And I've been making, I'm going to say I make 3/4 of them in person, and the other quarter I have to do virtually due to my work travel schedule. So I would be happy to give as much notice as possible as well, to anyone who's willing to step up and do that. But I don't want to throw somebody, we don't want to throw someone into that position, Tracy.
Felt
Yeah.
it coming.
Yeah. But don't want to burden you with it.
Hey,
and
don't
you
worry, you're not going to be
understand
the
that-
new guy forever.
That's right. But no, it is it's a big board with millions of dollars being discussed and being voted on constantly. It's
9 a.m. fourth
yeah,
Wednesday.
9 a.m. fourth Wednesdays. So, but we're looking for someone who could volunteer to just be the alternate in the event I can't make it. In case I cannot make it physically.
Mark, you
and-
felt how
and they
that
don't have a
worked
quorum.
earlier, right? Where Scott said you were voluntold.
Huh? Yeah, it has to be a councilman. It has to be an elected
Absolutely.
official. So.
Are you up for it?
Where's it meet at?
Right now, they are meeting at off of LPGA, where there's a tennis court there. I can't think of the name of the plaza, but we are hopefully, which you'll find out here shortly, hopefully nearing in on securing our lease to move it up to LPGA at the intersection 95, where Foundation Risk Partners was.
Okay.
I have the time.
I appreciate, Reed, why don't you go ahead and make that nomination then?
I would like to nominate Tracy Grubbs.
I'll second.
We have a nomination and a second. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Nominations are now closed. Would anyone here from the public care to comment on Tracy Grubbs' nomination for this fine board?
It's an
There
important
being
one.
none, back to council. Final comments? There being none, call the roll.
Councilman Foley,
Yes.
Councilman Grubbs,
Yes.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. Once again, you'll love the pay and benefits. With that, the public hearing portion of our meeting is now open. Item 18 is the first reading of ordinance number 2024-04, the adoption of the City of Port Orange comp plan for the years 2022 to 2045. Ordinance number 2024-04 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the City of Port Orange Comprehensive Plan in its entirety pursuant to Chapter 163 of the Florida Statutes, providing for adoption of the City of Port Orange Comprehensive Plan 2022 to 2045, including amendments to the future land use element, the transportation element, the housing element, the public facilities element, the public school facilities element, the recreation and open space element, the coastal zone management element, the conservation element, the intergovernment coordination element, the capital improvements element, and the property rights element, inclusive of all associated tables, exhibits, and maps, providing for repeal of ordinances inconsistent with this ordinance, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, providing for transmittal to reviewing agencies, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2024-04.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, proper second. That item is now open on the floor and for discussion. Wayne, who do we have?
Penelope Cruz, Planning. Thank you, Mayor. We always like to give you those long title blocks to read, so that's our job.
You do it well. You've got the track record, that's for sure.
So today, as you said, we're here to review the update to the comprehensive plan. These plans are required to be updated every 7 to 10 years. We're always in a weird spot on the state's schedule. We were originally scheduled to update this in 2017, which is a really bad timing. It's like 7 years after the 2010 census, right before the 2020. So the new laws changed where we were able to send a letter saying, we don't really want to update it right now. We want to wait till after the 2020 census. We've kept up with all the legislative updates. Our plan's good. They agreed and allowed us to update it after the new data came out, so we had a better plan. So that's why we're here before you today. So the comprehensive plan has 11 required elements per Florida statute. With this update, we're also adding an introduction chapter that kind of goes through how the plan is set up, addresses interpretations, and includes definitions and acronyms and things like that. As we were going through this assessment, you recall we came before council and we've had a couple public workshops. We went through that assessment. We had a workshop in November of 2022 with you guys, and then continued through that assessment and found that there really wasn't a lot of significant change that we needed to make to the plan, that it was effective. And so you'll see as we go through this presentation that there weren't a lot of significant changes. It was a lot of just updating, consolidating, and making it more user-friendly for everybody involved, removing outdated information and updating all the data analysis and map series. As we went through that analysis to update the plan, kind of your starting place is updating all your data analysis, starting with your population projections out through the new planning horizon. You can see for over the past 20 years, we've pretty much kind of stayed steady at about a 10 to 11% of the county population. And so that was a pretty comfortable place percentage to use in projecting out into the future.
Very interesting on that slide to see our actual growth numbers declining
Yes.
over the decades.
I know it feels like more, but it's really not.
I think that probably has a lot more to do with regional growth that
Yes.
impacts into our city versus our city actually at a high growth pace.
And we were
Yeah.
talking about Williamson Boulevard, and earlier when you were thinking your comments, I was
Yeah.
thinking about the amount of traffic we get from that growth coming down Williamson Boulevard that has nothing to do with the city of Port Orange, and we keep adding to it, and you wonder why we want an interchange there.
Right.
Yeah. So also as part of that assessment, we're looking at our level of service standards. All the facility-specific elements use level of service as a tool, a measurement tool to make sure that you're going to have enough of those facilities to provide adequate services through your planning horizon. Always something important to keep a note that there are some level of service standards in our plan that we have no control over, such as state and county roads and public schools. So starting off with the first element, the future land use element. So we start off the analysis looking at where we're at is with existing land uses on the ground, still pretty heavy residential community, but a little bit more balanced than past years. Then we take a look at the future land use map and we see, what's out there right now as far as future land use densities that are allowed. We compare that with the vacant land that's out there and see, as part of our analysis, we do a build-out analysis and see if the vacant land at the future land use density that it's allocated is going to provide enough density for the projected population through the planning horizon, and we are good. We do have enough to support the projected population. So the future land use element didn't really have a lot of significant changes. We are adding a new category just to provide the options for anybody who might want to annex into the city, might be in a Volusia County local plan area where they're allowed to annex, but their density is frozen. It's capped at what they have at the county. And so this new land use category allows them to come into the city and apply a land use that matches the density at the county. Added some policies to help with grants and a lot of just consolidation, reorganization, and formatting. Our transportation element addresses all modes of transportation. There were no proposed changes to the level of service standards. And really this element, the changes primarily focused on terminology changes and being consistent with regulatory agencies. There are some policies to support future applications for grants for pedestrian safety improvements. Also some policies added to support the state initiative of Vision Zero to reduce vehicular related deaths across Florida. Some statutorily required policies added regarding compatibility to airport zones, and then some policies to support multimodal transportation. Housing element, again, not a lot of significant changes, basically just doing a lot of the required data and analysis updates on all the different types of housing data. And the data and impact analysis goes into all that. The main change with the housing element was adding a framework for accessory dwelling units as an option for generational living and affordable housing in our community as we get towards build out. Putting this in the comp plan does not implement it. It just sets up the framework in the comp plan. So if the council directs staff at some point in the future that you want to implement something like this, the comp plan won't stand in the way. So we're just taking away that barrier in the plan, and then whenever you're ready and you want to direct us to do anything with this, we're able to do so. So again, those were the main changes in the housing element. Recreation and open space element. Probably one of the bigger changes here is addressing a future recreation master plan that also was drafted as part of this update. That will come before you at some time in the future as a standalone document. The state law changed several years ago to where they don't require any more facility-specific level of service standards. It used to be that in the state of Florida, everybody had to have cookie cutter level of service facility standards for recreation open space, but every community is not the same. You might have communities that are older communities that might want to do pickleball or other things. Pickleball wasn't even a thing back before the last time we did our update. Now it is a big thing. So they got rid of the requirement where you had to have cookie cutter facility standards. And so we're taking advantage of that to remove those facility standards out of our comp plan, keep a parkland standard so we still have a level of service standard in there. We can still charge impact fees and develop parks how we feel. But as far as what facilities we want in those parks, we want to remove that out of a state-controlled plan and keep it in a local plan where we can amend it as community needs change, as recreational trends change.
Makes a lot of sense too, because you've got a lot of regional stuff where one area, because all the municipalities and the county all kind of share a little bit of the Parks and Recreation vision, so to speak, and allow residents from neighboring cities and anybody within the county to participate and attend them and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, it just gives us the ability to have that control here locally, and we can update it and change it how we need to fit our community trends and wants and needs. So that's really the biggest thing with the recreation open space element. The rest of the elements, nothing really significant. Public facilities, conservation, coastal zone management, public school facilities, capital improvements, really was just updating to meet Florida statute and regulatory changes. A lot of consolidation, reorganizing, putting policies in better places, getting rid of a lot of duplicate things that weren't necessary and just made the plan bigger and unusable. And then adding policies that can help support future grants. So today is what we call the transmittal hearing, the first reading. After today's hearing, it'll go to the state and the regional review agencies. After they do their review, it'll come back hopefully in June for a final adoption hearing. We'll have to send it back up to the state for a final blessing, and then we will be functioning under our new comp plan for the new planning horizon. So I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Scott, go ahead.
Can you just, if, I hate to put you on the spot like this, but dive into the coastal zone stuff. What are we seeing there that impacts us directly that provides a lot of concern as far as, I mean, does it include, is it strictly tied in somewhat to storm surges and storms and things like that, or is it also tied into a lot of these things we're seeing with our coastal areas with these derelict vessels and how those are impacting our
Not
cities?
so much that. So back in the early days of comprehensive planning, that was actually how the comp plan started, with this coastal zone element in Florida. That was the main element. It had almost all of what you see now spread amongst other elements was in this coastal element. Now not so much has to have all that, so we're able to move some of those into appropriate places. For us, because even though we don't have beachfront, we are still considered a coastal community. So a lot of what we have is dealing with storm surge, in making sure there's policies regarding sustainable development and looking at potential impacts for sea level rise and things like that. So there's guiding policies. If we want to go any further with any of this, we would need to update our land development code to make changes if we want to implement anything more stringent than what's on the books right now. But there are encouraging and guiding goals, objectives, and policies for how to address these things in the future for sustainability.
Okay.
I thought it interesting in looking at that question, even though we don't go all the way to the coast, but what was presented there, the critically eroded beach, was basically the entire swath of Volusia County, with the exception of Ponce Inlet, where it's an inlet, not a beach. And that is of great concern to all of us.
Yeah, and then it also gets into the evacuation zones and things, because pretty much the whole barrier island is on our end is coming over Dunlawton Bridge through our city, and so there's regulations in that element with regards to making sure you don't exceed evacuation times and things like that.
All those things make us entirely more vulnerable, even on the river. It's not that these storms are not what they used to be. They're more and more and more, and we become more and more vulnerable as the barriers that we have in our beach. That's a big issue.
Yeah.
It is, and I don't know. Having lived here all my life, like you have, you've seen that beach disappear over decades, bit by bit, and I've never seen it as small as it is now.
Well, and if you look to the north of us, you've seen where it's actually broke through several times in the last couple of decades, and they're having to go in there and replace parts of A1A, and in some cases it broke completely through some of the other barriers. So.
And I see what Brevard County did about 15, 20 years ago in renourishing their beach, and for the most part, it's still there.
Yeah.
So there are ways of doing this. There are ways of doing this, no doubt about it. And that big picture stuff, even though that is beyond our scope, it still affects us, and
Yeah.
we need to prepare for it. Got anything else?
No.
Drew, what you got?
Nothing really. I mean, it's pretty much standard thing that we do every so often and needs to be done. And so, yeah, it's just time to get it done. I think it was smart to delay it for a couple of years to get through so it coincides better with the census and everything.
Okay. Tracy?
The only question I have is, since we are limited to almost build out inside the city, inside the coding, is there an area for the density being built on as far as going up along sprawl?
Yeah, I mean, some of the vacant land that's there, allows for a little bit higher density already. It's the existing land density that's on the books. Not everybody takes advantage of it that way, so,
Correct.
but, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's where our height restrictions are going to come into play, right?
Correct.
And certainly in our Ridgewood Avenue corridor, as that's redeveloped and the like. Reed?
No, well, I know this is a lot of work. This is like extremely labor intensive, so I appreciate everything that goes into this. It's been interesting. I've skimmed it a few times now, and every time I found something else that was of interest to me. I'm like Tracy, I had a meeting where I was talking about my opinion of where I think Port Orange needs to go development wise, and Scott just said the key word, height restrictions. I don't care so much about how vertical we go as I do how horizontal, because in my mind, I want more surfaces that are not impervious. I want more nature to stay intact, as much greenery as possible. I don't, if you take a 5-story building and you stack it on top of each other and I get way more green space, I'm going to be a lot happier. If you shove parking lots under buildings, those are things that I think are good for the environment and good for Port Orange long term. That's just my opinion. That's just where I'd like to see things go. But I think this, you guys are, it's a great job. I don't really have any questions. Appreciate everything that went into this.
Some of the data that I found interesting was housing affordability. It's a concern of mine. You take a look at the average home in Port Orange. In 2017, it was a $211,000 home. Just 5 years later, that $211,000 home is a $353,000 home.
Well, what's
Yeah.
staggering is how much of we still have of mobile homes. That number is really staggering to me and stood out on the slide. And that has been an affordable housing option for so long. And now it's
Now you see the price of mobile homes
Yeah.
even accelerating much the same way. And I know it's a macroeconomic supply and demand.
Mhm.
There's more demand for housing than we have supply. But at the same time, if we explode supply, we're going to have a lot of other infrastructure issues. So, and I know that I'm commenting on something that is beyond our scope and control,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that housing affordability shouldn't be a concern of ours. So I appreciate you including that data in there as well.
On the slide that's on your screen, these are pretty much, I've kind of tried to circle in green. These are the areas over the next 10 years or so where we're going to see growth. These are the larger vacant areas. Some of them we already know what the plans are. They already have zoning in place and things like that. But this is where we're going to see growth. And we're pretty much bound to the west. This whole area where our current boundary is, this area up here where my cursor is the Tomoka Farms local plan. Down here is the Samsula local plan. So we're pretty much bound. It doesn't mean that those areas can't annex in, but they're capped at the current zoning density, so it doesn't really make much sense. So we've really got this corner down here as far as future expansion, this corner down here at Airport Road and Pioneer Trail, and the area up here that's already part of a local agreement that we've had in place for many, many years now. And we already have city future land use on it. It's just a matter of it annexing in and applying the zoning on it. So we really don't have a lot of places that we can expand out just by existing plans that are on the books. So we got what we got, but the build-out analysis showed that the density that's currently on the books for this vacant land can support the projected population.
Very good. Any other questions of staff? Would anyone here care to comment on the item? Come on, Robert. I was wondering when we'd see you tonight.
Mayor, council members, Robert Reinhagen, 1425 Dexter Drive North, Port Orange. With regard to the conservation item, policy 2.2, objective 2.2, incompatible uses. My first reaction was they're all incompatible with conservation. But in particular, it says, consistent with state and federal regulations, the city shall protect wetlands by directing incompatible uses away from wetland areas and establishing standards for mitigation based on policy of no net loss of wetlands function as a last resort. The idea of as a last resort is what really bothers me, because I don't think that's anything but a negotiating position. It's a starting position where the city starts from. And part of what I mean by that is the city is constrained by the existing zoning that's already been approved. And so to try to force them into something else, you're going to have to get a negotiating agreement going, some sort of a negotiation. And we saw that with the Hammock Preserve, where they were unwilling even to concede the residential units that would have been attributable to the added acreage that went for commercial. But anyway, I started thinking in terms of compatible uses with regards to wetlands. And I thought houseboats. Why not have houseboats? I mean, if we had houseboats, it might be good for affordable housing units. It would not block the flow of water. You wouldn't have to change water, the natural water flow, and it would increase. You could increase storage, and I think that's an idea that deserves merit, and you should think about that, creating a houseboat ordinance of some sort.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Anyone else on this? There being none, back to council. Comments, questions? There being none on adoption of first reading of ordinance number 2024-04, call the roll.
Councilman Foley,
Yes.
Councilman Grubbs,
Yes.
Councilman Bastian,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner,
Yes.
Mayor Burnett.
Yes, 5-0. That brings us to item 19, which is first reading of ordinance number 2024-06. Ordinance number 2024-06 is an ordinance of the City of Port Orange, Volusia County, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 70, Traffic, to add an article regulating use of golf carts within the City of Port Orange, providing for general enforcement, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Move to approve ordinance number 2024-06.
Second.
I was starting to wonder there for a second. The item is, we have a motion, proper second. The item is open and on the floor for discussion. Wayne, who's speaking to this?
It's a combination of Chief Marino, Community Development Department, and the city attorney. So if you want to have a briefing from the chief, and then we can go to questions from there.
Or some sort of recap?
All
I
this
know
for
that
golf
we,
carts.
this item is on the agenda at request, so this is not the first time we've discussed it.
Correct.
But I
If you
do
don't-
want to make sure that we give some kind of recap to the public before a discussion.
I can do that, Mayor, if you'd like.
That's fine by me.
So this is something that's been worked on by city staff as well as the city attorney's office that came to light after there was a matter out in the Cypress Head Golf Course community that this is one of those things where you always just thought it was that way because, and it was intended to be this way, but not all of the T's got crossed and the I's got dotted. So that's really what this is about, is we have a beautiful golf course community where from day one in its inception, the intention was always to allow the use of golf carts within the community from a legal perspective, and that there is state statute that provides for how this is accomplished. And this is just really tightening up what has always been the way of life and what has always been expected and allowable to make sure that we've got everything the way it needs to be for not only the interest of the community out there, but also for the city by and large. So.
Okay. Council, any comments or questions on the item before us? There being none, would anyone here care to speak to the item? There being none, back to us. Council, final comments or questions?
So one of the questions I have is, in the write-up is stating golf carts as long as it's on a 8-foot section of sidewalk. My question is keep them off the sidewalks, put them back on the street where the cars are just as big, dealing with pedestrians, walking, people in scooters and kids and things of that nature. Because you know it's going to end up happening is somebody on a sidewalk is going to take a corner and hit a kid. So why allow them on the sidewalk at all?
You want to speak to that, Matt?
That's a policy decision.
But isn't that consistent with
the state only will allow it, the reason there's an 8-foot requirement as a minimum is because the state will only allow it along state rights of way on an 8-foot sidewalk. The thought process there is it's sufficiently wide to allow the mixture of both pedestrian and golf cart traffic. So, but it truly is a policy decision for the city of Port Orange.
Do we need the chief to speak to this also? Chief, come on. Want to make sure we get complete information.
While the chief's coming up, I would offer that in the community, you have sidewalks that are 8 feet and some are narrower, and I think that's the idea.
And this is not a new practice.
Right, and this is something that's been going on. It's what they all do. There's 800 homes out in, or how many are out there, Lance? 575 homes, thank you, sir, in Cypress Head community. So again, this is something that's been going on for
Just
nearly
feels like 800.
3 decades now, and I think the 8-foot wide sidewalks, which are really wide, is I'm not aware of us having any issues in the past in those particular areas.
That's correct. Chief Marino, Police Department. You are correct, and that was one of those requirements also, as Matt Jones just mentioned, with the Department of Transportation, is the 8-foot wide sidewalks. In addition to that is additional signage that will be required to put in there, just to actually even let the residents know that golf carts are allowed to be operating on the sidewalks. I would think there'd be a period of some type of education, since this is going to be new to everyone, in addition to the signage. So I think it's going to be a combination of a lot of different things. But again, it's not a requirement. The infrastructure's there, as you mentioned. That's what they do like to see if we are going to allow this per state statute. So that was the reason we put that in there.
I would think the HOA can help us with the communication piece as well.
And also too, because it is a golf course community, a lot of what is designated a sidewalk versus a cart path all kind of flows together through the flow of the community, because we have roads, sidewalks, subdivisions within the subdivisions, if you can call them that, all within that community that differentiate different portions of the golf course community as the course flows throughout. So
correct.
And then lastly, Chief, a question dealing with licensed drivers, minors. Where's the regulation? I read it here, and it says will require golf cart drivers to have a valid driver's license or learner's driver's license. So
Correct.
do they still need a driver's license person with them, just like a car, or not?
So the way it technically reads is that we're looking at 16 and over, the way our ordinance reads. So there's no clear delineation as far as the requirement age as there is a learner's permit on the roadway. Where you do run into, and my biggest concern is going to be underage kids, obviously.
Yeah.
And that again will be part of the enforcement and education. Let's reverse that, education, and then subsequently potentially enforcement. But I don't see that, in the beginning. I do know there was a question. So there is some caveats to whether you can or cannot issue citations to juveniles. You can, and it could potentially affect, their driving history. But then again, that comes to the parents, right? If they're going to allow their underage driver who's not licensed to take this vehicle out, and know that they're operating them on the roadway, yeah, there could be potential consequences for that, especially if, God forbid, they're involved in some type of accident. As you mentioned, that either causes property damage or, even worse, an injury.
Yeah. Well, I know it's, to me, I have no problems with this ordinance. I'm good with the ordinance. The issue is education. And we have one community that is a golf community. Completely understand, and I'm behind that with no issues at all. But that education has to be broadened throughout the city, because just around here by itself, we got golf carts going every which way as it is. So you're going to have one pointing to another, and it's the education part that's not been proposed out there.
And we have in the past, as you've mentioned, we've received complaints in other areas of the city, not so much to deal with this, a project such as this. And then that's where we go out and we push out, PSAs, obviously, to let them know what's allowed, not allowed, the differences between golf carts and low-speed vehicles, which that doesn't apply here, because we are allowing golf carts on the roadway. This particular area is unique in the usage and the way it was designed, so it kind of lends itself to it. But you are correct. If this does come up in other areas of the city, we potentially could either have to add restrictions or be more careful depending on what roadways they're adjacent to, What are the speeds of those roadways? You know, again, is DOT involved because it touches some of, you know, some of their jurisdiction. So there's other things to consider if this is to go forward. But for right now, with Cypress Head, I think the way it was laid out, and as I mentioned, we'll just need to do a lot of education up front.
And you already said that there's new signage going out there for this, so there's gonna be a sign at the entrance
Right.
saying, don't go out with your golf cart.
And correct, and that was one of the things as we were, when this council brought this forward, that legal and community development and I talked about is, as you just mentioned, right? As new projects are built along Pioneer Trail, that the residents know that once they get to the edge of that subdivision, that now they're back into whatever our ordinance reads or whatever state statutes are applicable. So, you know, that, we've spoken about that, so that was definitely something we've already thought about. And they'll just have to know that, you know, or even if it's signage right there at the edges, you know, no golf carts beyond this point, however we do it. So,
One of the things to keep in mind, Chief, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, is Cypress Head is also unique in so much as some of the roads are private and some of them are public. And in the sections of the community where they're private streets, this doesn't apply. A 12-year-old can drive a golf cart down the street in the private area. Same thing with Covendale over in Water's Edge. So as we educate, we need to be very cautious that we don't make any kind of a blanket thing. If somebody is uncertain, we want to definitely refer them back to the police department.
So there's I think, and we have traffic enforcement agreements with various subdivisions, so they might be one subdivision. So I don't want to say that without looking, but they may be one of the subdivisions that contracts through a traffic enforcement agreement to allow, actually puts
with the HOA, right?
With the HOA, it puts our enforcement in, it's as if it's a public street for enforcement purposes.
Correct.
So that might actually be one of those subdivisions that does have.
So the rule would be always send them back to the police department if we're not sure. Let them ask the question there.
Sorry, I have a question.
Go for it.
The 8-foot sidewalk part of this, is that the sidewalk that runs along Cypress Springs Parkway? It's the main road, and that's the one.
Yeah, that's the main.
Because I've got a lot of pause about the sidewalk portion of this. I'm 100% behind the road, but I don't know. You can't drive a motorized vehicle on any sidewalk in the entire city, right?
Correct.
Any motorized vehicle. It gives me pause to include the sidewalk in the ordinance.
Keep this in mind, that if you make any changes, you're changing the practice that's already going on. This is not something we're adding an amenity to that community.
No, I get that, absolutely.
Codifying what's already going on there, but we're also allowing our ability to regulate it and make sure it's done in a safe manner.
Well, I think they should be able to ride their golf carts anywhere they want to on the roads. That's not an issue with me. On a sidewalk, that gives me some concern. I go golfing all the time. I'm terrible at it. And that's nothing to do with this, but.
Thank you, I count on that.
But nevertheless, just imagine driving a golf cart down a sidewalk at all, and just seems, it doesn't sit very well with me, but the rest of it doesn't bother me, so, go ahead.
Any other comments or questions, council? There being none, on the ordinance, call the roll.
Councilman Foley?
No.
Councilman Grubbs?
No.
Councilman Bastian?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stiltner?
Yes.
Mayor Burnett?
Yes, 3-2. The public hearing portion of the meeting is now closed. Additional items, item 20, city attorney report.
Nothing further.
Excellent report, thank you. Item 21, city manager report. Another excellent report. Item 22, council committee reports. Over to CTPO, Councilman Reed Foley.
Nothing to report.
Excellent report. With that, any other business come before us this evening? There being none, have a good night, everybody. Thank you very much.